Karina. She's burning on a day like this. 27 degrees, and of course it's Bay FM's Health Hour, and we're having a lovely chat with Madonna this morning. And been through the flu, we've been through the stem cells.
Yes.
Now, what do you think we should have a chat about?
So I think chatting about New Leaf. Yeah, so chatting about New Leaf.
Well, let's tell people what New Leaf is.
Okay, so New Leaf Natural Therapies is
Yeah.
a clinic in Wynnum, and we're a multi-modality clinic. So basically we have all sorts of natural therapies available.
Okay, and people
So-
can call you if they've got
Absolutely.
any of the problems we've been talking about.
That's
on
right,
there.
yeah. And we
Okay.
can send them information about the stem cell products and, and things for the flu and that sort of thing. So
Throw
absolutely.
Throw a phone number.
3348-6098,
There you
and
go.
it's Lynn and Sanu who are on the counter.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're great. They're great at sort of working out what people need and what appointment, because sometimes people don't know, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, no surprise.
They
but
don't know
sort
what they need, though. Yeah,
exactly. But the good thing is it doesn't seem to matter whether it's exhaustion or emotional or, whatever people have got going on that's just bugging them, because sometimes people just can't quite find an answer
Yeah.
to what's going on, or they've been to lots of specialists and they're just not getting anywhere. And I hate to say it, but some people think of naturopaths as a last resort. But, like it's... and I've got people who've been, because I've been local for 22 years, people often they'll see me for a year or so, they'll sort out what they're going on, and then I'll see them a couple of years later, with their kid with something, and I'll see them for a little while and sort that out. And then, a few years later, and I go, I know that name. And, so it's sort of interesting, people tend to come in during crises. But it's always nice if people actually want to look after their health long term. But I'm always surprised, to be quite honest, when I will find that someone, say, has a gluten insensitivity or a dairy intolerance or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I talk to them 2-3 years later and they go, oh no, I haven't touched it since you said. I'm like, really? Well done. I'm always surprised.
Yeah. Little things that they've gone to get some help.
Yeah.
And they get better and they forget it.
Yeah.
But you're thinking, well, hang on, we fixed a problem.
Exactly.
And that's nice.
And I think that's one of the things about natural therapies that people don't realise. A lot of the things that we are sorting out on that day-to-day level, things that are annoying, like sinus problems or gut issues or having the flu 4 times in a year or, whatever these things are, they can often lead to more serious chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
Because all of the things that we're scared of, the heart disease and dementia and cancer and things like that, they're all the same sort of causes. The causes are inflammation and toxicity and stress. And so because they're the things that naturopaths are really good at, you never know what you're preventing by sorting these things out before they're big health concerns. And I think I've said it before as well, there's so many... For example, quite often when someone comes into me with cancer, there's different sides of the immune system, so T helper 1, 2 and 3 cells. And T helper 1 cells, if you've got raised T helper 1 cells, it generally is autoimmunity. So things like rheumatoid arthritis or Hashimoto's, or basically where the immune system is attacking something in the body, lupus or things like that. If people have got excess T helper 2 cells, that's the allergic inflammatory side. So it's more things like asthma and hay fever and sinus problems and IBS and things like that. And some people unfortunately have both of them up in the air, so they can have both of them simultaneously, and which is my sister. she can have rheumatoid arthritis and asthma at the same time. Well, because I was even watching a podcast last week and it was saying, oh, you can only have one at a time, and I'm thinking, well, that's rubbish. But anyway, because you can absolutely have them at the same time, which means the poor old immune system has got no idea what it's doing. But when we're sort of, if someone is constantly having things that are T helper 2 dominant, so inflammatory like hay fever and asthma and sinus problems, and the T helper 1 cells are depressed, there's not enough of those, they're also the ones that kill things like cancer cells. So it means that something like that can be just bubbling away in the background, and by the time we find it, obviously it's never good by the time we find it.
I was just thinking, this has happened to me a couple of times.
Right.
Where you know you're not quite right.
Yes.
And someone will say, well, what's wrong with you? And you say, I really don't know, I can't explain it.
Yes.
Because I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
Now, would you find a lot of people out there, they wouldn't come and see you because you'll say, well, what's wrong with you today?
Yeah.
And they can't really explain it, so they'd rather not go.
Well, that's sort of where Because don't forget, doctors are looking for diseases. So when they're doing your blood test and they come back and say you're fine, fine doesn't mean fine. Fine means you're not diseased. Because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So it means your iron has to be so bad that you're in the worst 10% of Queenslanders for them to show an iron deficiency. It means your thyroid has to be so bad that 20% of it is working by the time they find thyroid problems. So you don't want to find it in blood tests.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get them done. I'm not saying don't get your blood tests done. But it's sort of by the time doctors find things, it's often, it's
Later
often...
on down the track.
It's very much down the track. Whereas when we say look at people's blood or do an oligo scan or do a VLA or, quite often we find 10 things if we do 3 tests on people and say, okay, so the cholesterol's raised, but your HDL, the good guys, they're really good, but your LDL's really low.
Yeah.
But your triglycerides are really high, so that's a predisposition to diabetes.
Ah.
But the diabetes doesn't show because it's not there yet. Or we might do an oligo scan and find high mercury, which can then disable your energy cells. So by the time we're looking at things, we're getting things before disease. We get people in with cancer and all sorts of things as well. Don't get me wrong. We get people with big stuff where they need support in the background as well. So it's a different way of thinking when you have a practitioner that you're working with who's in natural therapies. Same with like so many of our clients, they just love Rob, that regular acupuncture and massage to sort of, keep the body up and running because it boosts the immune system, it reduces stress, it gets the blood flow going, it helps to, stop people being the cranky old so-and-sos that they've become.
I've been called that a couple of times. I thought I was grumpy one day, but I was wrong.
So when people are seeing a natural health practitioner, you have to be thinking it's a different perspective. So we're looking for things that are wrong now that you sort of sort out, and then that problem's sorted. That's the aim.
So if you're thinking there's something wrong with me, but how am I going to explain it?
Yeah.
I won't go in and talk to anyone because they'll think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Because I can't explain what it is that's wrong with me.
And you can imagine unless it showed, like when we were chatting to Linda last week, where if it doesn't show up in the blood test, then quite often the doctors simply don't have another solution for you.
So you're fine.
Yeah, so therefore they're more likely to think, it must be a mental disorder, go see a psychiatrist or go see a mental health practitioner. So because they don't have any options if it doesn't show up in the blood test, so it's not it's simply not diseased yet.
Then doctors in a lot of cases aren't looking at what you would be looking at.
Exactly. We're looking at totally different things. So for example, when we're doing an oligo scan, which checks for heavy metal toxicity and mineral levels, when we're looking at that, we're actually taking a readout of what's in your body at the time. So what's stored in the bones, the ligaments, the tendons, the nerve tissue, the muscles, and in the blood. And we're getting a printout of what's stored in your system. So it's right there right now, so it's not like you have to wait 2 weeks for it to come back as well. But quite often say the minerals might be perfect because people have been taking supplements for a long time, but we might see that the digestive tract's starting to fall apart or metabolism's really low. So if you don't keep taking those supplements, then things could really start to fall apart.
Right.
So we sort of see the underlying issues. Actually, my friend Linda, who I mentioned before, she just had a DNA check where there are some DNA testing, and hopefully I'll do this course, it's another couple of grand, but there's a test where you can actually have a look at how your inflammatory genes are going. So how does your body respond to inflammation? How does my body respond to inflammation? Well, so some people actually have chromosomal deficiencies so that they simply can't remove inflammatory hormones from their body. So the inflammation builds up and up and up and up. So if they're not taking something that's a natural anti-inflammatory and removing it from the system, they don't have the genes to do it.
Right.
So there's all sorts of things these days. I often have people bring in DNA testing that they've had done with other practitioners, but it really depends. There's so many of them out there, and they cost anywhere from $300 to $2,000.
Right, yeah.
And that's why I haven't done any training on them, because so far I hadn't actually seen one that looked like it would be beneficial for me as a naturopath, because I need it to be stuff that I can do something about. Like there's no point in me knowing about a gene that gives you a higher risk factor for, say, motor neuron disease if there's nothing I can do for motor neuron.
I tell you what, we might have to continue along this line next week because very interesting what you've had to say. Well, it's always interesting what you're saying, but this week especially I think we've covered a couple of things that we don't normally cover.
Yeah.
And so I'm suggesting to people, if you've got something wrong, you don't know what it is, don't worry about not being able to explain it, because your people will be able to find it out.
That's our forte.
And that's at New Leaf Therapy.
New Leaf Natural Therapies in Wynnum, yeah.
At Wynnum, whereabouts once again?
It's 94 Edith Street in Wynnum. And if anyone's sort of, there's a Facebook page, so people can message me directly if they go to New Leaf Natural Therapies. There's a messaging thing, and I get back to people within 24 hours if they've just got any questions and want to get my slant on something.
Say g'day. Yeah.
And say g'day.
Well, next week, once again, you'll come back with us?
Absolutely.
Great. I find it very, very interesting. Thanks, Madonna.
Fantastic. Thanks,
Have
Paul
a
J.
lovely weekend. Don't get sunburnt. I'm going out to get my vitamin D.
I'm going to brave the pool at some stage over the weekend, I reckon.
I think you should. Okay, coming up to midday, we'll have a look at the latest news, traffic, weather.